So we've been getting radio calls just so you guys are blocking traffic, stuff like that.
Blocking traffic? I don't know how you can do that from right here. Are there cars driving on the sidewalk right here?
That's just what people are telling us.
Oh, okay.
We don't know if you're blocking traffic or not.
Yeah, no, we get it. People call them, they exaggerate.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing that. Yeah, no, we record everything. We've been standing on the Great.
They thought no one would ever believe her over two police officers until the city paid her $7.9 million. For Sarah Mitchell, it started as the most ordinary night of her life. She had just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital, exhausted and ready to get home to her 8-year-old son. The roads were quiet, the streets nearly empty, and the only thing on her mind was getting into bed after another brutal day of saving lives. Then she noticed the headlights. A police cruiser had been behind her for nearly 3 blocks. At first, she didn't think much of it, but when the red and blue lights suddenly flashed behind her, her stomach dropped. Confused, Sarah checked her mirrors, then slowly pulled over to the side of the road. She had no idea that within the next 10 minutes, her entire life would be destroyed. Officer Daniels approached her window first, tall, broad, and already wearing an irritated expression. His partner, Officer Reed, stood back near the cruiser, arms folded, watching. "License and registration," Daniels snapped. Sarah handed everything over politely. "Was I speeding, officer?" Daniels ignored the question. He glanced at her documents, then leaned closer into the window. "You failed to signal back there." Before we continue with this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Sarah blinked. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Step out of the vehicle." Her heart skipped. "What? Why?" "I said step out, now." Sarah's voice trembled. "Officer, I don't understand. I didn't do anything." That's when Daniel's face darkened. "Are you refusing a lawful order?" "No, I just—" Suddenly, Reed rushed forward too, and both men were now shouting over each other. "Get out now! Hands where I can see them! Turn around!" Sarah panicked. The commands were coming too fast, too loud, contradicting each other. She lifted her hands, trying to comply, but before she could even unbuckle her seatbelt, Daniels yanked her door open and grabbed her arm. "Stop resisting," he screamed. "I'm not resisting," Sarah cried, but they didn't care. They dragged her from the car so violently, her phone flew onto the pavement, still recording. Sarah screamed as Daniels slammed her face against the hood, while Reed twisted her arm behind her back so hard she thought it would snap. "Please, you're hurting me," she begged. But then Daniels leaned close to her ear and whispered words she would never forget. "No one's gonna believe you." Within minutes, Sarah was in handcuffs, bleeding from her forehead, bruised across her arms, shoved into the back of a squad car while strangers stared from the sidewalk. She spent that night in jail, and by morning the police report had already been filed. It claimed Sarah had become aggressive. It claimed she assaulted Officer Daniels. It claimed the officers used necessary force after she violently resisted arrest. Sarah couldn't believe what she was reading. Every word was a lie, but the damage was already done. Her mugshot spread online within hours. Her employer placed her on administrative leave pending investigation. Parents at her son's school whispered when she walked by. Friends stopped calling. Her entire life was collapsing because of 2 men with badges. Then 3 days later, something changed everything. A local college student named Marcus uploaded a video to social media. Marcus had been walking home that night when he saw the stop happening. Something about the officer's aggression made him start recording from across the street, and what his camera captured would shake the entire city. The video showed Sarah calm and compliant the entire time. It showed Daniels escalating immediately. It showed Reed grabbing Sarah before she ever resisted. And most damning of all, it clearly captured Daniels shouting, "Stop resisting," while Sarah stood motionless with her hands in the air. Within hours, the footage exploded online. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Public outrage spread like wildfire. News stations picked it up. Activists demanded answers. Protesters gathered outside the police station. At first, the department defended the officers. The police chief stood at a press conference and insisted the matter was under review, urging the public not to rush to judgment. But then Internal Affairs requested the officers' body cam footage, and suddenly the department claimed it was missing, gone, deleted. That alone raised alarms. Digital investigators quickly found the files hadn't malfunctioned. They had been manually erased less than an hour after Sarah's arrest. Someone inside the department was helping cover it up. That's when the investigation widened, and what they uncovered was worse than anyone imagined. Daniels and Reed weren't just bad cops, they were repeat offenders. Complaint after complaint surfaced from old victims, people who said they'd been beaten, falsely arrested, humiliated, and ignored when they tried to report misconduct. A young man claimed Daniels planted drugs in his car 2 years earlier. A woman said Reed broke her wrist during a traffic stop for talking back. Every accusation had been buried, ignored, covered up, but now the public was watching, and the walls were closing in. Then investigators found the messages, private texts between Daniels and Reed, messages where they joked about roughing up suspects, messages mocking people they arrested, messages laughing about falsifying reports. And one message sent just 20 minutes after Sarah's arrest read, "Another one bites the dust. She'll learn not to mouth off next time." That text alone destroyed them. Sarah filed a civil lawsuit against the department. Her lawyers presented the video, the deleted body cam evidence, the false police reports, the internal messages, and the long history of ignored complaints. The city panicked. They knew if this case reached trial, it would destroy them. So before it ever made it to court, they settled. $7.9 million, one of the largest police malpractice settlements in city history. The announcement stunned the nation. But for Sarah, the money wasn't enough. Because while the city paid her, the men who ruined her life still hadn't faced justice. Until 1 month later. In front of cameras, reporters, and a crowd of furious citizens, Officers Daniels and Reed were marched out of their own precinct in handcuffs. Both were charged with assault, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, filing false reports, and violating civil rights. The same men who once laughed while arresting innocent people now stood silent in orange jumpsuits. And when the trial began, Sarah sat just feet away from them. This time, they couldn't hide behind a badge. She testified for hours, describing every moment of that night. Her shaking voice filled the courtroom as she relived the fear, the pain, the humiliation. Jurors watched the video again and again, and after less than 4 hours of deliberation, guilty. Both men were sentenced to prison. Daniels got 8 years, Reed got 6. As they were led away, Sarah stood outside the courthouse with tears in her eyes and cameras in her face. A reporter asked her what she wanted people to remember most. She looked straight into the lens and said, "They thought the badge made them untouchable. They thought no one would ever believe me. But the truth has a way of surviving, even when people try to bury it." And just like that, 2 corrupt cops lost everything because they chose the wrong victim, because the woman they thought they could destroy ended up exposing them all.